not pretending like we're this
Yeah.
Barbie and Ken. I don't even know what their relationship is like, but we're not
Right.
pretending we got it all
This
figured out.
perfect couple.
Yeah, and we've used we've had to, we've gone through our own difficulties in our marriage, and we've had to really work at this. So from that, we can extract some of the things that we really learned from this. And as a result, we're just more aligned.
Welcome to episode number 194 of the Couples Therapist Couch.
Welcome to the Couples Therapist Couch, the podcast for couples therapists, marriage counselors, and relationship coaches to explore the practice of couples therapy. And now, your host, Shane Birkel.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Couples Therapist Couch. This is your host, Shane Birkel, and this is the podcast that's all about the practice of couples therapy. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy the episode and you want to be part of a community, then definitely join the Couples Therapist Couch Facebook group. That's completely free. Obviously, you can always join the Couples Therapist Inner Circle, which is the paid, basically an amazing supervision group where we talk about couples therapy. Therapists ask questions. There's a ton of course material on working with affairs, working with emotionally focused therapy, doing relational life therapy, all kinds of different course material that you can get access to. And I'm really excited. I'm sort of revamping the whole inner circle. And there's a new business option, which is about building your couples therapy practice, which it could be an add-on to the clinical side of things if that's something that's a good fit for you. So go over to the website and check it out. You can get a lot more details and information. I don't want to take too much time talking about it here on the podcast, but it's something you should definitely take a look at if it feels like that could be a good fit for you. Today, I was able to catch up with Tina and Michael LeBlanc. They are therapists, teachers, and authors of the book, The 10 Habits of Happy Couples. And I was really excited to do this interview with them. They talk a lot about how they incorporate education into their work with couples. And I think it's a really good idea as far as, when we work with couples in therapy, there's only so much we can accomplish. And usually I don't want to take too much time doing the educational piece, even though it's essential and extremely important. And so they create the educational side of things that the couple can watch in between sessions. And that way they can focus on the things that they need to do in therapy when they get to therapy. The other really cool thing is that Michael and Tina are actually a married couple. So it's fun to listen to them talk about trying these things out in their own relationship and working together as they work with couples. So without further introduction, here is the interview with Tina and Michael LeBlanc. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Couples Therapist Couch. This is Shane Birkel, and today I'm speaking with Tina and Michael LeBlanc, therapists, teachers, and authors of the book, The 10 Habits of Happy Couples. Hey, Tina and Michael, welcome to the show.
Hi, Shane.
Hi, Shane. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to talk to you about the book today, but why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about yourselves?
Okay, you want to start?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so we're both couples therapists, as you noted. So I've been practicing for about 20 years. I work mainly in a nonprofit organization doing counseling, but Tina and I obviously have this company that we own together as well. And we work a little more mainly with couples in this work. My work individually is mainly with individuals, but I have an EFT background, so that's what Tina uses in her couples work, but I use it with individuals. So it's like a nice fit for us, where I can work with the individuals and one of the spouses who needs some work, and using the same concepts as a couples EFT, but individually done. So yeah, that's mainly the work I do. I use a lot of IFS as well, and but then we do things together with our company for couples, and that's where my couples work comes in.
And we should note too that we're also husband and wife, married.
Yes, not brother, sister.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Parents of teenage boys.
Yeah,
that's pretty much our life first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the business comes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, were you therapists first, or were you in a relationship as a couple first?
We were therapists first.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Uh-huh.
were therapists first. Met at that stage where Michael was just finishing up his degree,
Yeah.
and I was working at the time already. And yeah, so from
Actually, a
this,
therapist friend of ours introduced us.
Uh-huh.
So nothing but
That's
therapists
great.
going around. So
Right.
yeah, and
yeah.
that's 20
Yeah.
years ago. So when we met, we were at the very beginning. He had just finished his master's program, and I
Yeah.
had just been a year in therapy, doing therapy at that point. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, although he's older than me, but
Yeah.
he started later in the
I had a
year.
career before that. So
I
yeah.
see. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, so when we met, we never anticipated that we'd actually have a business together at 20 years later. But life happens in mysterious ways. We have always shared that common interest, obviously, of counseling.
Mhm.
But really, our business is called Better Yourself 365,
Hmm.
and that unfolded during COVID, actually, because
Right.
at that point, I was already in private practice and had a small private practice. I was also a consultant, so it's like half-time private practice, but all my clients had become just naturally couples. At some point, I wasn't seeing any individuals. They were all couples because I was doing more and more EFT training. Emotionally focused therapy has been my approach from the very beginning. I've become a certified therapist and supervisor in the approach, so I'm pretty deep in that approach, and I absolutely love it. I find it an amazing approach, and always I always feel very grateful for Sue Johnson, who started to create that approach, and how she's impacting so many couples
Hmm.
because of her initiative there. Um, so I think because of that, I just started to get more and more referrals for couples therapy. And during COVID, as you know, like every other couples therapist that's listening, or practice started to be impacted. Couples starting to not come in. A lot of them weren't open to doing online counseling. Initially, online client counseling was hard to figure out for us, so it's a new avenue.
Mhm.
And so we decided to look at other ways to reach couples. And initially, I was thinking of that on my own because that was what I was doing on my private practice. But I got so passionate about it that Michael was just like, hey, like, why don't we do that together? Like, like we could do the couples work outside of couples counseling, which is, has continued to be my thing. But everything else that we were talking about doing with the business to reach couples in other ways than counseling,
Mhm.
we were like, yeah, like that just felt right. And from the very start, it just was like a right decision. And it
Mhm.
just felt really like we're on par when we're together doing stuff. So we started with weekend retreats for couples. That's how we started. We were doing them online initially during COVID. And then we decided to just we got all this equipment, got all this training on how to deliver online courses, and we were teachers. Was our first trade, so
Mhm.
we had that part pretty naturally. So we started developing online courses, and we developed videos and the whole curriculum for couples to do some work on their own from home.
Hmm.
And that's how we started. It went from that to, hey, like, we have so much content here, let's write a book.
Mhm.
And it just unfolded from that, thing after thing. Then we started to really like during COVID to be like socially present too. So on social platforms, like we'd start to deliver like live Facebook sessions, and
Mhm.
YouTube videos and blogs. And we had more free time during that period too,
Hmm.
initially anyways. And then we
Yeah.
got really busy with our
Initially,
business.
anyways.
And then, yeah, really, yeah, too busy at some point. I burned out in the process at some point in our early stages of business.
Hmm.
But everything just because we were so passionate about it, we just wanted to do it all, and we did too much,
Yeah.
like, all at once. But it's been great to have that component of our business to offer couples now. Yeah, and
Yeah, that's great.
also it's shaped also my approach to couples counseling.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and I don't know
Well,
if
yeah,
I'm.
I mean, there's a lot of things therapists can do to support their clients, and one of the things that we learned is that people do get engaged with video work, especially outside of our sessions. And it is a way to capture some of their passion about wanting to move forward and make changes in their lives. But a lot of them really don't know what to do in between sessions. So that kind of was the premise of our book, how to support couples in a way where they could do it on their own without us, because we know that a lot of them depend on some of their critical work until they come into our office. They're waiting for that. So a lot of our work is done teaching them skills that they can learn and that'll become habits in their life in between our sessions or after our work is done. So that's really been a lot of the focus of our company outside of private practice.
Yeah, that's great, because I feel like, oftentimes we work with couples and hopefully we're doing, good work that's helpful to them. But, I feel like there's not a lot of education out there for couples about what a healthy or a happy or a good relationship looks like. And, there's only so much time we have when we're working with people one-on-one in session. So I can see how that would be super beneficial to give them more resources and more support and education, between sessions.
And that you hit the nail on the head there into what we were thinking, especially with my couples counseling approach, which was kind of like an aftermath of everything else we were doing for couples together. It was just like, wow, this is like, how can I use this to maximize my work with clients in session? And one thing, even though I always loved EFT therapy, a big part of the premise of that is that, when you work with the emotion and attachment, the work is very experiential. The changes are very experiential in session, and there's a shift that happens in session. And the premise is couples then continue, because that shift has happened in session, they continue expanding on that in between sessions, right? They start, there's a softening that happens, so they start to be more conscious of how they move in with their partner. It changes their dynamic, which I agree, it happens, absolutely. But I always felt that some couples grabbed onto that faster than others. And some other couples, especially couples who had one partner or both sometimes, that were, I'll call it emotional IQ, but more like people who maybe had childhood emotional neglect growing up, which
Right.
I'm sure you see in your offices is very, very present and common. And I always felt like those couples needed a bit more. They needed a bit more tangible concreteness of how do I keep, like, I don't know what happened in session. I don't recognize what I did different, right? And how do I know what to do in between sessions? And so it was more in that lens, trying to, how do you bring the experience in session, outside of session? And then we had all these videos and content that we had developed. So I decided to really change my approach to counseling. And is it okay if I just tell you what it looks like now?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's more of a therapy / coaching approach that I have now.
Yeah.
So it's like when couples sign up, they have a commitment that they make. They commit to 10 sessions. They pay in advance for the 10 sessions. And they commit to doing work in between sessions every single time, like in between, see each other every 2 weeks. And before they sign up for that, I meet with them for an hour consult call. I make sure it's free. I make sure that, I get a good sense of what their needs are, and that they're ready to do this kind of intensive work, because it's really intensive. And it's not that I say that after 10 sessions, you're all good to go. It's just that I say, you need to give yourself at least 10 sessions to give your relationship a chance to see progress.
Yeah.
And even though I might have said that before this program, people would still, like, when it gets really hard, or they don't see the progress fast enough, or one partner was on the fence and, get scared of the emotional stuff that's coming up, they sometimes would exit before they got to the 10 sessions, right? It wasn't that common, but it would happen. So this is kind of like this mindset that you're in this together, you're giving it at least 10 sessions. and you're doing all this work in between sessions. So what it does is that it creates accountability, and that's more the coaching part, because we don't do that as therapists. We give them that freedom, right? In session, oh, do you want to see us again next session, right? Like, and there's this total flexibility, which I appreciate. But the couples that I see now are they're ready to do hard work, and I screen for that. And they're with me 90 minutes in session. Like, we do an hour and a half sessions every 2 weeks for 5 months. And in session, it's hardcore therapy. Like, I go deep, I go fast, much more than before, because they're doing all this work in between sessions. They're listening to videos, they're doing an exercise together, they're taking risks, right? That are guided, like it's a structured risk in the sense that they're both told, okay, we'll try this week, and it's structured. And I build upon every session. It gets a little bit more, the challenge or the risk taking, the emotional risk taking increases a bit. And by the end of the 10 sessions, then they make a decision on what they want to do. Do they feel like this has been helpful and they want to continue and engage for another 10 sessions? Or do they feel like, I think we have enough for us to continue practicing. I feel confident we can do that. That never used to happen to me after 10 sessions. Like, I don't know about you, but my average was like 15, 16 at least, if not 20. Before couples would stop. Right?
Yeah, that's great. One of the things that you're talking about, I think what happens with a lot of therapists is that, especially when people have a lot of trauma, that people are coming in week after week, and the therapist might be doing really good work, deep work, but there's maybe not a lot of transparency about what's happening and why this is going to make your life better in the long run. So there's a lot of trust from the client, hopefully, that I hope this is going to make things better. But what I see with couples is sometimes there's people who have really good intentions and they're still struggling with certain things. And so if we can teach them, here's what you can try with your partner this week, to try to start practicing, and I feel like that's what you're doing. You're creating an experience, which is like, these 10 sessions with all this education in between. And there are things, it feels like a lot more transparent what you're doing in the process. And there are things that they can be working on. And, even identifying like, well, I was trying to communicate better, but it got really hard. That's really good information. Like, whatever they're learning from you, even if they can't do it, like that helps you for sort of focus in on why was that so difficult, and helps you in the next therapy session with them.
That's exactly it, Shane, because it's not that the homework that they do, we call that homework, but the work on their relationship in between sessions, it's not that it's always easy. And I'd say half the couples might get blocks at one point and another in the process, but that's what we use then in therapy, and we can dive into those blocks faster, because it's like the risk they took in between session flared up. What's important to look at? It's like it gives you a mirror right there. It's like, okay, this is important, right? And the structure of it, I hear a lot of people, like in the couple, especially the partners that are more withdrawn by nature. They're more the withdrawer in the relationship. They maybe don't feel as confident in their skills around tuning in emotionally, being accessible emotionally to their partner. It's a foreign language, and going to repair, and maybe you can speak to this because you're withdrawer by nature.
We don't use withdrawer. We don't use that word.
We've changed the word in our book.
We changed some of the terms of EFT. It's one of the things that, not to sidetrack here, but it's one of the things that as a couple who practice the same approach and apply it to our own relationship, you can take a hard look at, is it applicable to me? Because it's great when you're reading in the book and you say, you guys should try this. This makes sense. But then we get to try it on a daily basis ourselves and get to say, I don't know if I like that. Sue Johnson's smart, but I don't like that term. I'm going to change it. So we changed it in our book. We changed some of the terms to make it, because I've always felt the word withdrawer or distancer or avoider, it has a negative connotation to it.
Uh-huh.
But then you have pursuer, which is the other side. Oh wow, I'm a pursuer. Isn't that great? Oh, I'm the withdrawer. Isn't that terrible? So we changed it to connection seeker, which is the pursuer, and safety seeker, which is the withdrawer,
Oh, I
because it
like that.
more hits the nose on the. It hits what it is I'm doing,
Why you're doing
the
it.
reason why I'm doing it, what I'm attaining, rather than like getting away from her. What am I approaching? So anyway, just a side note on just that, just the language itself, as we know in therapy, makes a big difference.
Yeah, and that safety seeking nature of one of the partners in the relationship is afraid of conflict, right? Like, so any wisp of conflict is going to be extremely scary, as I'm sure you've seen in your offices too. And it might stop them from going back to repair. And often it does. And so it leaves this pressure on the other partner to try to initiate repair, and that in itself can cause conflict. So for me to hear couples coming back after they've learned about the repair process, and I break it down into like really manageable chunks, right? We talk about that in the trainings that we do together. And they come back and they say, wow, like that was so liberating for me to actually know what I'm supposed to try to be doing here, to have they see it as like a tool, a map, like something that gives them, that helps with that anxiety that they feel around it, especially when they know their partner is speaking the same language and they're trying to do this together in the same way. So it's that kind of stuff for me that's just been so fascinating.
And it
to see.
resonates with people, really resonates with people, that giving them a specific roadmap of how to do that thing when we're not there. Because a lot of people are like, well, I thought that Tina said we're supposed to do this, and the other partner says, that's not what I thought we were supposed to do. My thought was that. But when you have basically what appears like another session through Tina's videos that she does with her clients in between sessions. So she gives them videos of Tina,
Of us.
and some of you, saying, this is the educational piece. This is what your activity is. You go do it. And then when you come back next week to counseling, we'll have a conversation about it. So it feels like an extra session because it's her again. It's us, So then they know exactly what they're supposed to be working on, and it all starts to line up for them, and they really resonate because obviously their progress is even better than it was before in your approach.
And you don't have to waste, and not waste, that's not the right word, but you don't have to spend any time in session on the psychoeducational pieces, because we know, especially in EFT, when you're trying so hard to stay focused on the emotion, and sometimes you have to run after the emotion because they keep trying to escape it, and then you have to come back. And you know that if you start to do, you see some educational pieces, and sometimes you're tempted to go there, and if you do, you're likely it's gonna be harder to bring it back. You might be drawn down the rabbit hole, as Sue talks about. You're gonna get caught in the content and go down the rabbit hole, and then at the end of the session you didn't get the experiential piece that you were wanting them to have, right? So they get all this education outside of the session, more than you could ever even touch in session anyways. And it brings them at a different place. And we're now healing injuries in session 8, 9, we're talking about past hurts. I never used to be able to do that before session like 15, 16. Like it was just too hard. It was too hard, and they weren't ready to do that work. And yeah, it's just really fascinating. I've been it's been very fulfilling to see the changes happening at a different pace, the commitment that the couples have. And mind you, I remind you that I screen for couples, right? Like, so it's couples that are ready to do this work that work with us.
But that's great. That's great. And I have a question. There's the 10 habits of happy couples. And I'm sure that's a big part of what the educational stuff that you teach in the course material that you have as well. But I'm wondering, does that feel like a linear process for the people, where week 1 they're going through section 1 and so on, Or is it sort of like in the first session, you're like, oh, you guys really need to go look at section 5 because you're
Right,
really
right.
struggling with this thing in particular or something? How does that work with the habits that
Good
you're
question.
helping them with between sessions and everything?
That is a very good question. Actually, it's interesting because I would say the program that they do in between sessions is
Really.
more based on EFT.
Mhm.
So it's less linear. It's more like foundational stuff that they need to know about attachment. They need to know about, the cycle and their role in it, their typical role. They need to understand what their triggers look like and how to help each other with their triggers, right? They need to know how to exit from their cycle. They need to know how to repair properly. They need to know about how to talk about their hurts and their injuries in a way that their partner can support them. That's the kind of stuff that they have built in session per session, but the 10 habits are presented to them before they even come into their first session. They have a preparation assignment to do before they even come in. So that's where they get 10 habits part. That's where they get like because we see the 10 habits as more this overall picture of what you have to have in your mind when you're navigating your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And no couple can do that effectively 100% all the time. Like you're constantly, weaving in and out. Some habits are, more your focus for a period of time, and then some others can take precedence. But the habits as a whole are presented to them before. We have this video where we go through all the 10 habits. Some clients read our book before they come in, but it's certainly not.
It's a crash course based on our book.
Yeah.
90 minutes of we basically give our book to them in 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Explaining it.
And some of those are the concepts Tina's working on. Those are like habits 1, 2, 3. We start from 10 and work our way down. But 3, 2, 1 are some of the core of what she does in her couples work, with some attachment at the introduction of the book. So the question of, is it linear? No, it's not. But all of it is they already know it all before they've already been exposed to the habits. And then some of them they'll be working on, but the majority of their EFT content of the book, you'll find it in 3, 2, 1.
In habits 3, 2, 1.
Habits 3, 2, 1.
Because the habits 3, 2, 1 are about helping couples navigate conflict and deepen their connection. Those are the habits that are focused specifically on that, which is linked to what they come in for, which is the therapy side of it, right? But it doesn't mean that that's all they have to manage. It's not just conflict in their relationship they're trying to get at, right? They're trying to build those other habits that are more part of, being on as a team and being on the same page with things, and, setting goals together and enjoying their life together. And so that's why I like to expose them to all of that, to have them thinking about it in that way. Especially because the very first habit they're exposed to is better yourself first. And that is probably, I'd say, the most aha moment for at least one member of my couple, one partner couples coming in, because it's like, it puts the focus on them. It's like, okay, we're doing couples therapy here. You're working on your relationship, but if you don't take a look at yourself, and if you don't see the parts of yourself that you need to improve, grow in, you will never really get your relationship where you want it to be. And we know this as couples therapists, right? We can be like the best couples therapists in the world and progress with the couple to a certain degree, and then you'll get stuck somewhere. There's like what's it called? The plateau. I should know that's a French word. The plateau. And often if one of the partners or both of the partners often aren't ready to do some individual work to work on their own coping and their own self-regulation, they're going to have a harder time co-regulating together. There has to be that work on themselves at some point in order to bring your relation where you want to be. But before this new way of working with clients, for me, that was, as I don't know if you feel that way in your sessions, but sometimes that's a very delicate thing to bring up. there's like a self-awareness that needs to happen. You put your white gloves on, and you present well, okay, we keep getting to this place. We're stuck here. What do you think is happening here, right? What if there was more work done individually here to help us? Like, let's bring on, I would present it before as let's bring on more team members to our team. And maybe working with an individual therapist might help us get unstuck here, right? It was
Yeah.
like delicate process to bring up. And
Yeah,
now,
definitely. Because do you feel like it's because at that point the one partner feels ashamed that we're basically saying you're the problem. You need to
Yeah.
work on this.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes,
I've had that moment many times in couples therapy where it's obvious that that's where we're at in the moment, but
mhm,
people sometimes have a hard time hearing that. Of course.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's hard to bring that up, and
Yeah.
exactly for the reason, Shane, right? Because we don't want them to feel like it's enough that their spouse is saying you're the problem.
Mhm.
Right.
We don't want to be perceived as a therapist also saying, well, maybe this is part of the problem." We don't
Yeah.
want them to hear that you're the problem, right? When we're trying to say, this is part of the cycle, this is part, your PTSD or your depression or your ADHD or whatever it is just part of the cycle, right?
Hmm.
Because it's a challenge that you have, just like we all have a challenge, right? It just shows up differently.
And that's the explanation to the person who feels like they are told that that's the problem. Then there's the other side, which is the person who's saying you're the problem. When better yourself first is the first thing that they read, then it's implied that you also have a contribution to the problems in this marriage or
Mhm.
whatever the relationship is. So
Hmm.
what is your part in it too? And then the partner who was feeling it's always my fault gets to see that yes, my partner also has things to work on. It's not just all of my work
Mhm.
in this therapy that we're going to do together. And probably a lot of times it's the men or it's the
Hmm.
kind of the safety seeker of the group who's like
Exactly.
it's always me working on stuff. And I know even from a connect because I'm a safety seeker, so I
Hmm.
know it always feels like, oh, I have these things to work on. But in our relationship, Tina owns her parts, and because
Hmm.
she's very aware of that. But in a lot of relationships, one person's not. One person's saying you need to do this work, and when you do that, we're going to be better. So let's go to counseling so you can work on that thing. So the better yourself first implies that both people are working on their stuff. That's the only way this is going to work.
Hmm.
And that's why we chose that name for our business. Even though we're a business that works with couples, our
Hmm.
business called Better Yourself 365. So it's tying in the idea that when you're coming in to work on your relationship, you better be thinking about not how you're going to change your partner, but how you're going to change yourself.
Hmm.
First.
And not changes in, changing your personality or anything like that,
No.
but change hearing what your partner has to say and really seeing how, without wanting to, there's an impact in how you respond to your partner
Yeah,
or how you
exactly.
come in with your partner.
Mm.
And so, yeah, so that Better Yourself 365, is part of our business. It's that premise. Plus it ties into 365, which is habits,
Yeah.
things
Hmm.
that, you have to focus. It's relationships is not something you achieve. The goal of improving your relationship is not something, it's a goal there and you achieve it at one point. It's like something you always are working through, right?
Process. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's a big part of our messaging. And when couples come to that very first session, they've had this messaging already. They've talked about it. They had an exercise where they had to talk about their strengths that they see when they think of the 10 habits of happy couples
Mhm.
and where did they feel their biggest challenges are. And they bring that to me right in that first session. Like, this is where I think we need to focus on the most
Yeah.
as a couple. So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
tell
That's
me,
great.
yeah.
I'm wondering for the two of you going through this process of creating something together, you have each of your own therapy experiences, the way that you both work differently, with different people. You have your own relationship where you've learned a lot, I'm sure, over time. And so as you're sort of writing the book and creating the course material, what was that process like in working together?
Well, it's the best part of our business.
Mhm.
So working together, I think we both. I can't speak for Tina, but I know she said
I
that
say
before
this
too.
all the time.
Yeah, so it's the best part of our business is working together, and then, but we just seem to be aligned a lot in kind of how we see things and what we want out of the business, and I think we also see our relationship as a laboratory to try some of the things, some of the ideas that you have, because sometimes you have an idea, it's like, oh, I think couples would really like this, and then we apply it to our own life. It's like, well, maybe that's not going to work, and you know, 'cause in fact, it was funny, but the last podcast we did, we had a fight that morning before we, because you know, that's one of the things that like we're not pretending like we're this
Yeah.
Barbie and Ken. I don't even know what their relationship is like, but we're not
Yeah.
pretending we got it all
This
figured out.
perfect couple.
Yeah, and we've used a lot of, we've had to, you know, we've gone through our own difficulties in our marriage, and we've had to really work at this. So we, I guess, from that we can extract some of the things that we really learned from this, and as a result, we're just more aligned, and so therefore, it's been kind of surprisingly easy, you know, together. It's just it takes a lot of work to build a business, right? So, and we're always trying to
It's
figure.
stressful at times.
It's
like,
definitely stressful, but but not because our
Because of us.
relationship has suffered. It actually has deepened
Yeah.
as a result of it. Because
Absolutely.
think about it, like if all you do all day long is therapy and talk about how to improve your relationship, and then you have a business where that's all you do is talk about the dynamics, the concepts, the experiences of how to improve your relationship. That's what we talk about all day long, is how to improve your relationship. So of course our relationship improves because that's what we work on all day in our business. And so, you know, as a result, it's kind of been one of the great parts of our relationship, I think.
Yeah,
And
that's
I think,
great.
yeah, and I think that also we've never shied away from being able to um, show our vulnerable side, our authenticity with couples. And to me, that's something that's been very special because you can't do that as a therapist, right? You can't, as a therapist in session, you're limited. It's about them, right?
Mhm.
And you don't want to get the focus off of them. We know we have a skill called what's it called? Self-disclosure or something,
Mhm.
that you're supposed to use sporadically and skillfully, and
Oh yeah,
to
right.
help to help bring upon a depth of understanding for the couple, and then you move on.
Mm-hmm.
But in our in the educational part of our business, the videos, the trainings we've developed for couples, the every time we do well, in our book, you see it, we bring our story
Our
in,
personal
Mm-hmm.
story. Yeah.
because like Michael said, we've had challenges too. I mean, we
Mhm.
both come in with attachment that wasn't secure attachment, for different reasons. Yours more family related, mine more relationship related. And so we had to deal with that. We had to deal with me being an anxious pursuer, and
Me being risk adverse, emotionally risk adverse.
yeah. And it's caused, we've gone through a period of really 2-3 years of very, very stressful things in our life that just
Mhm.
kept happening, one thing after another, and big things, like losing a child and losing a parent, and delivering emergency, 2 months early for our first son, and just
Things that test. Things
it,
that test you.
yeah, and it's just it
Mm-hmm.
was just like one after another. And as we know, I'm sure you see this with your couples too, that often it's where even the strongest of couples, even if they had a real strong connection from the start of their relationship, when they're hit with those stressors, right, that's when they start to feel shaky. They don't cope as well individually, and
Where
it
they go into their
impacts.
own self and they kind
Yeah,
of cope on their own.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that period of time was when I got really even more anxious and avoidant
Mm-hmm.
myself, which
Mm-hmm.
was new to me because I did not want you to see
Mm-hmm.
how much anxiety was happening with me,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's
Mm-hmm.
that vulnerable part, right? And often that's what couples see and feel. And so it's been really nice for us to connect with couples on that personal level. And I think that's part of our brand. That's part of why couples respond to us. And I've seen that even with the couples that I see, like we definitely see that in our couples with our weekend retreats, and it just helps them open up right from the start. It's like, okay, here's two counseling therapists, couples counseling therapists, and
They have to work on the relationship every single day.
right.
Yeah,
So it can't be that bad.
Yeah.
This can't be
Yeah.
that bad.
Yeah.
right?
So we
Yeah.
want them to see themselves in us, I
Mhm.
guess is
Right.
another word. And it's interesting how much shame or embarrassment there is for couples who need help.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
coming
exactly.
from, you in your work, it's, sometimes one, often one, sometimes two are not sure this is what they should be doing just for a host of reasons. In fact, when we go do a book signing, it's really interesting to watch. Like here's our book. So this book is on the shelf or on the table, and Tina and I are sitting at the table, whatever bookstore it is, and we'll just see the dynamic of people walking by, and you can see so many times people will look, they'll see the title of the book, they'll be with the partner, their eyes will hit the ground, and they'll scoot by the table because they do not want anybody thinking that they're a relationship that's in trouble that might need help. So they
Right.
like hide and they'll go and they'll not come back. Then you've got another couple who's like, hey, yeah, we went to therapy before. Like,
Right.
what's your book all about?
Right.
But so many times couples they just have this sense of shame about coming for help. So we want to make sure we try to reduce that sense in them and all in our work that we do. And we simply do it by being honest about how hard we have to work too. And
Mhm.
we're not trying to pretend. In fact,
No.
the less we pretend, the better it goes, and more couples can
Mhm.
Yeah.
see them.
Yeah, and I think that's when the self-disclosure can be so helpful and validating for people to sort of see that, even though you're experts, you still struggle with the same things. And, you know, and also like, I would take your word for things better if I knew you're a safety seeker, for example, and I'm also that, and you're saying,
Right.
well, I know these things work really well for me when I
Yeah.
feel stuck, then, it really resonates.
Mhm.
Right.
Absolutely.
Thanks for
Yeah.
using that word.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's really nice.
I like that. I like that. That's
And
good.
I think as you say that, Shane, I think like, if I think of the couples therapists that are perhaps listening to this here, there's been times where when we were going through our hard stuff in our relationship, um, I remember I was in the process of trying to work towards certification as an EFT therapist during the time. I was right deep, knee deep in that. And I felt like a fraud. I felt like a fraud as a therapist because it's like, here I am helping other couples and I'm going
Definitely.
home and we're fighting more than ever. And I'm scared, right? I'm scared
Yeah.
of becoming, not being able to exit out of that cycle. Because
Right.
when you're in it, you don't, even if you're a therapist, you don't really see it happening in the moment all the time. Sometimes it takes a while for you to recognize, wow, okay, we're really spinning here. Like, what do we do about this? Right. And that's the conversation we had to have at some point. Like, okay, what do we do here? Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's at that point that you started to do the EFT training, came back a different man.
Well, I came back an informed man, and it's interesting because I know, as I said, I don't do couples therapy. And we were talking before, like you need to be genuine when we're doing our work as therapists. I think as with Tina as the connection seeker, she's just much more knowledgeable about the gaps of our relationship, and she pays attention to those more, and she tries to close the gap more. We use this concept of like a mat. We call it a connection mat.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what we want to do in therapy, in couples therapy, is to get both people on the mat at the same time. And this is where they truly can hear and see each other. But we have barriers to getting on the mat. So as a connection seeker, she's always on the mat. She's always on the mat, reaching over to my side saying, come on the mat with me. Like, let's talk about our life together and let's work on stuff and, let's do hard things and share our vulnerable side.
I don't sound like that.
No, not literally.
Right.
So she lived on the mat.
Comfortable there.
I am thinking about going on the mat, but not always on the mat. So because the mat is scary, as a safety seeker, I'm seeking safety. Safety is off the mat. So I need to learn how to first have Tina step off the mat so I can get on, because it's safer that way. Then I'll invite her on the mat. Now we're both on the mat, kind of thing. So I guess my point is, because she is so knowledgeable about the dynamics of relationship and what's going on in it, it makes sense that she does couples therapy. For me, genuinely, that's I don't always notice. Am I on the mat? Am I not on the mat? Is she on the mat? Like, where is the mat? I can't find it. So my work has to be with individuals, because that's what I really get. I get the individual experience. She's so knowledgeable about the dynamic between two people that it makes sense that that's what she does. So that's one of the reasons, I think, because I was trying to think, like, why don't I do couples work? That's couples therapy. And I think just because I don't always notice that stuff, but she just automatically understands, like, okay, we're not on the mat. We need to spend time together, honey. Let's sit down and have a conversation about X. And for me, it's like, I hadn't even thought of X. And okay, so let's do it. So I think it's not my natural thing to be doing couples therapy, but my natural thing is to work with the individuals, because that is an experience I can feel on my own that I know is true and genuine and I can speak to, not just by reading a book, but this is my experience. So in particular with the safety seekers. So when we do our weekend retreats, we split people off, and Tina will take the connection seekers and I'll take the safety seekers. And I feel like I'm right in my element there, because this is just like you said, like, okay, hey, everybody, we got us all together. Let's have a conversation about that connection seeker who's always trying to yank you on the mat.
Right. Oh, that's
But
great.
the natural part of what you're talking about, though, like, even though you might not feel, I think that can be developed with any therapist, but even though you might not feel that your place is doing couples counseling itself, you're very natural to do the educational component and to bring in your experience individually, but your experience of us as a couple when we do the retreats, when we do the psychoeducational programs for couples.
It's not my preference to do couples therapy, because I think we should and are allowed to decide what we think we really want to be doing and what makes me, so I think the individual work in therapy wise, that's it. Although I am taking a hard look at the sermon counseling, because that I think would be a good fit for me. But anyhow, all that to say, like, so you're a safety seeking marriage therapist. So as a safety seeker, do you have the experience of having maybe not noticing the gaps in your relationship? I don't even know if you have a partner.
Yeah. Yep, I'm married. Yep.
Yeah. Do you notice those?
Yeah.
Those
So
that I'm talking about?
I feel like for me personally, I tend to think everything is fine. So I'm coming from that assumption a lot. And so I'll miss things. I'll be like, where my wife is like, can you believe this and this and this? And I'm like, oh, I didn't even really notice it. So I think that's one of the big things for me, is like, just sort of like not being conscious of, what might be going on with other people's experiences, including hers.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of communication, right? And I have had to work very hard on my listening skills as well, and trying to be present and trying to like take in her reality and realize that I can hold that, and it doesn't have, like, I don't have to be defensive about it, let's say. I can just listen and try to take that in without it being about me or something like that. Or that's the goal.
That's a beautiful gift to your wife,
Yeah.
to be able to be with her, be present with her without your own stuff getting
I'm
all
not sure if I've accomplished it yet, but that's
well,
what
nobody
I
has.
strive for.
Nobody has.
And that goes for the pursuer too.
Yeah,
like
sure.
For the connection seeker, because like, well, part of the habits that we try to help couples have in between sessions is just that awareness, right? Because so you're talking about that awareness that the safety seeker needs to have to be able to tune in to their partner like that. But the connection seeker has to have a different kind of awareness, because for many years, until you started to be more affirmative and stand up for yourself, for lack of a better word,
Identify my needs.
Identify your needs. Yeah, that's that's better than standing up, because that's if you're coming in. But until you start to tell me, make me aware of my move that I wasn't even aware of, right? Until you start to tell me, did you notice that I was trying to tell you what I needed right there? And now we're talking about your need. It's like, because as connection seekers, we're very much tuned in to our stuff.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we're not tuned into our partner, but because our partner is more kind of won't force it as much as we do, it's easy to just lose sight of it and just go back to our stuff, right? So that's part of the cycle, is that the safety seeker tends to go back, right? And okay, well, maybe I'm just going to tune in here, and I'll step back a little bit. And if the other partner doesn't notice that happening, we'll just
feels
make the
good.
space.
It feels good. Yeah. So it's like, I'm telling Tina, like, oh, this thing happened and I'm really having a hard time with it. And as she said, like 5 minutes later, we're talking about her experience. And then I don't even think it's a wrong thing. I just go along. I just went along with it and said, well, it feels good to be supporting my wife. So this is what I'm going to be present with her. And then the more work I did, it's like, okay, that thing happened. Oh, that thing that just happened. If I don't tell her, how's she supposed to know? So that's my work as a safety seeker, to notice it and verbalize it, so she could say, I didn't know I was even doing that, and I never intended to cause any harm by that. But now we have an opportunity to make a shift. And that's the kind of depth, I think, that all of our pieces of our business together has been showing me, is that I need to hear it multiple times to really get it, and sometimes in different forms too. Like some are videos, some are books, and some is talking to her, and some was working with my clients, and like, oh gosh, that's the thing that I need to do. I need to step on the mat. So identifying my needs to her is me stepping on the mat and telling her, like, could you do this instead? That's me on the mat. And of course, what does Tina want? She wants me on the mat. But my safety seeking mind says, that's going to cause conflict, and please don't do that, because that's bad. So what I know, that we have a strategy for repair, which is in our book, and we talk about a lot in our stuff. Step by step by step by step. I'm a man. I want to know what the steps are, because it doesn't come naturally to me, and I'm totally generalizing here. But as a safety seeker, I didn't know how to do it. Didn't know how to repair. So we have a process of repair. I have it printed. It's by my bedside table, because when we get into a fight and I need to go do my work, I need to know what the steps are, because I can't remember. She probably had them committed from 10 minutes after figuring out what they were, because that's just the way her brain works, not me. So I have to read them over. Okay, what am I supposed to do first? Okay, tune into your own emotions. Okay, I just need that. And I think our clients need that. They need sometimes the step-by-step approach, so they can practice it over and over, and before you know it, you don't need the piece of paper anymore.
This is so incredibly helpful, and I know that we're running up on the time here, but how can people find out more about you, and where can they find out about the book and your website and everything else you want to share about where they can find out more?
Yeah, well, certainly information on the book. I mean, the book is available on Amazon or any major bookstore, and on our website, the betteryourself365.com.
It's called The 10 Habits of Happy Couples, the book, by the way.
Yeah, and if I mean, obviously the book is a good way for couples to start making those connections for themselves into what they need to keep focused on. But if therapists are interested in having that component of asking couples to do work in between sessions,
Mm-hmm.
often what's available to us right now as couples therapists, a big part of what's available are workbooks, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
exercises, workbooks, things like that. But if couples therapists are interested in including some of that for clients and see for themselves what the impact can be, we do have our digital training that we have for couples set up for couples with videos. We have a shorter one that's just for a book. So instead of the book, a person can have the 3-hour
Mm-hmm.
video course content to work from.
It's called the 10 Habits
It's a
Crash
crash
Course.
course, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a more comprehensive program that we've set up for couples, and it's in a way for couples to be able to do some of the work on their own without necessarily needing couples counseling, because often like the feedback we receive when we check in on those people that have purchased that program, I check in to see, do you need more counseling after this, like, and half the time people are like, no, this was, I think we're good to go, on our own, it was really valuable what we learned. So that's the program that I think can be very beneficial for couples to do in between sessions when they do need more work.
It's called Taking Charge of Your Relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a 4-module course. It has 10 hours of video content, and that's what you can build on. The program I use in my couples counseling is a little bit different. There's more than that particular program, but that's not accessible to other people other than the couples that sign up for my counseling program. But that other package that we have for couples, the Taking Charge of Your Relationship course, that's accessible to anybody. So we actually have a free code that we'd like to give to couples therapists who are interested in seeing it for themselves and to see if that fits with their approach or not. Like maybe what we're saying doesn't fit with what you do, and you don't think it would be helpful for your clients, but maybe it will, and maybe you can figure out your own process of, maybe there's just a few videos that you want to give to some couples and some to others. Obviously the clients themselves would have to pay, but we could put a special deal on your show notes if you wanted to, for
Yeah, that's
couples.
great. Yeah, I can put it in the show notes if you want.
Yeah, that would be and we can give you also there's a code, a link for accessing the first chapter of our book for free if people wanted to just kind of get a sense of what it is.
So how do couples therapists get that free code?
Yeah, I don't want to put the free code in your show notes, but maybe if somebody would email me. So if you contact us through our website, we have a contact link, or if they can contact me directly at Tina at betteryourself365.com.
Yeah, definitely.
The free
sounds
code,
good.
it might change, like every so months we change the
Yeah,
code itself.
and I can put those directions in the show notes, like, hey, if you're a therapist who's interested in this free thing, then email Tina here or something like that. If that, whatever works best.
Yeah,
Perfect.
great.
Yeah.
Well,
Sounds
it was
good.
nice meeting you, Shane.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tina and Michael. I really appreciate having you both on. This was great.
Yeah, thanks.
No, thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Yeah, hopefully we can do this again sometime. All right. Thank you so much, Tina and Michael. I'm really grateful for you coming on and talking about all this on the podcast. Thank you to all you listeners out there. If you want to find out more, definitely you can get a copy of their book, The 10 Habits of Happy Couples. You can go to their website, betteryourself365.com, and you can check out their course. Actually, if you're a therapist and you want to preview their course for couples, they have generously offered to let you check it out for free, but you just got to email Tina at betteryourself365.com, and I'll put that in the show notes, and you can connect with her and check it out for free. So that was really generous of her. Also, you can get a free chapter of their book. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Again, I'm just so grateful to have them on and hear them talk about how they work with couples. Also, if you're interested, this episode is sponsored by the Couples Therapist Inner Circle, which is the membership site that I created about working with couples. And, at this point, there's hundreds of hours of content to help you become a better couples therapist. If you're just starting out, it's a really great way to get going. If you are a very experienced therapist, it's a great way to get education on working with affairs, working with high conflict couples, working with emotionally focused therapy, relational life therapy, all kinds of different things. And there's a really cool new way that I'm setting it up, which is that you can do an add-on bonus to your inner circle, which is about the business of couples therapy. And it's all about building a profitable couples therapy practice. And I'm really excited. I've been working with a bunch of people on building their practice, starting a podcast, being on social media more, all kinds of different goals that people have for themselves, how to use marketing. So I'm excited about that. If that's something that appeals to you, definitely click on it in the show notes. And if you're just interested in the clinical side, then you can get that option. If you want to get the business side, then you can get the clinical plus the business. So there's something for everyone there. And also, there, please join the free Couples Therapist Couch Facebook group. If that's where you're at in your career, you just want to join the free group. That's another great resource to take advantage of. And I'm always grateful for ratings and reviews on wherever you listen to podcasts. Really appreciate that. This is Shane Birkel, and this is the Couples Therapist Couch, the podcast that's all about the practice of couples therapy. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everybody.